It's nice to see a good turnout this afternoon, so thank you very much, everyone, for turning up. I know some of you had late nights, so even more impressive to see you here. How many people have their own business? Impressive. Good work. That's a really, really good turnout to see. So I think the introduction said something about how I really, really care about entrepreneurship, how I really care about business. So I want to talk a little bit about that subject, and in particular, how design thinking relates to it. For those of you who saw me yesterday, you may remember that I talked about design thinking being like a toolbox. So we're going to use one of those tools today, and hopefully you can take it back and use it in your own business or use it in someone else's business to try and come up with creative ideas. I always think it's a good place to start with a story. So I'm going to start with the story of the pet rock. Does anyone know the pet rock? Has anyone ever, no one's ever heard of the pet rock? You've heard of one person. That's great. That means the story will be really interesting for the rest of you, hopefully, then. So this story begins where most good stories begin, in a bar, right? And they were having a few beers, and they were talking about how annoying it was to have a pet. You know, every day you have to pick up the poop. You know, you have huge vet bills. When you get home from work, the dog's ripped up the couch, you know, made a mess of the apartment. When you go away, you have to find someone to mind your pet. And one smart-ass guy, he said, you know what, I've got the perfect pet. I never have a vet bill, I never have to pick up its poop, it never runs away, it always stays here. And everyone's like, whoa, what is this pet? And he's like, it's a pet rock. And they're like, everyone got on board with the idea and was like, you know what, that's actually a pretty good idea. And so what he did is he drove down to Mexico, he got a truckload of rocks, and he drove them back to the States, and he started selling pet rocks. It seems like a retarded idea, it seems like a really stupid idea, right? You're like, how could this ever work? But do you know how many of these rocks he sold? He sold 3 million rocks in 3 months, bringing him in $6 million US. It's pretty impressive. What's even more impressive is the fact that this was 1975. So if you translate that to today's value, it would be equivalent to $27 million in 3 short months from selling pet rocks. So the point is, there's opportunities everywhere out there. There's endless numbers of opportunities, even if you don't think they're awesome or if other people don't think they're awesome. Take a chance. Find out what people's real problems are and build on them to come up with creative solutions. So how do we do that? I mean, that sounds fine. We all want to have $27 million 3 months from now. That would be a fantastic outcome. I'm not promising that's going to happen, but what tools can we use to bring that about? I personally like this diagram here because it breaks it down really, really simply. Has anyone seen this before? It's pretty common for design thinking. One person, great. 2, 3, 4, yeah, a bunch of you, right? So it's kind of obvious. You have to sell something customers want. Yep, no need to explain that any further. You need to be able to make money off it because otherwise it's just a charity. Charities are great. I'm not bagging on charities, but if you're trying to start a business, you need to make money off it. But the final point, and I think the most crucial one, is can we do it? That's where I see a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong. I see a lot of students go wrong because they have projects that are too ambitious, they have technologies that are too far away from being able to do anything with them. So it's very much focusing on what can we do right here, right now, that customers want and that we can make money off. Again, if you can find this intersection between these 3 points, you get this concept of wow. And I want to go into a little bit about what wow means to me. And to do that, I'll tell another story if that's okay with you guys. And that story relates to what I call the champagne accountant. Maybe some of you heard me talk yesterday and mentioned that I used to be an accountant. Hard to believe, but it's true. Yeah, accountants got bad reps. But so this accountant, every time he had a meeting with his first customer, they would come in and he would offer his customer a menu. And on the menu, it would have tea, coffee, apple juice, and champagne. So everyone was like, yeah, tea, coffee, apple juice, champagne. Do you really have champagne? And he's like, yeah, I've got champagne. Do you want to open up the champagne now? And everyone's like, it's a bit early in the morning, maybe next time, but thanks. But what it did is it set a really clear tone for what type of accountant he was. You know, this is a classy accountant, the kind of accountant where you can have champagne at 8 a.m. in the morning if you want. There's a few people in the corner who don't want any champagne at 8 a.m. in the morning. No, but the point is, it set a very, very clear tone about what type of accountant he was. And whenever he sent his first bill to the clients, he told me that he never had anyone ever complain. Because people expect a champagne accountant to send a big bill. And on top of that, what it also means is that it creates this wow moment that makes him as an accountant stand out. And people go away and they tell their friends about the champagne accountant. Hell, I even traveled to Poland to tell you guys about his accounting firm. So it must be working, right? But the other point is, I asked him, this must be really expensive to be serving all of your customers champagne. No, he said. In the 3 years he had been doing it, no one had ever ordered the champagne. But it serves a point that to create a special moment, it doesn't have to cost much. And it doesn't mean that people are always going to use that wow moment. But it's about trying to create a moment that stands out within a business. So now I'm going to talk about a tool for figuring out how to do that. How can we create those wow moments? Has anyone heard of customer journey mapping? Same person over here. You can come and give the talk afterwards, it'll be fine. So customer journey mapping, it can be done in a variety of ways, okay? But it's pretty simple. What you do is you make a list of all the different points where the customer interacts with the business. And you may think there's only a few touch points where a customer interacts with the business. But once you start making that list, you'll find that it's actually much, much longer. So for example, if we were to do this for a hotel, I could probably come up with about 30 or 40 different touch points where the customer interacts with a hotel. Whether or not it's getting your car parked, whether or not it's getting your room key, whether or not it's getting the bill, whether or not it's booking online. All of these are moments when you interact with a business. And all of these are moments where you can create a wow moment. I particularly like this diagram here. So you see it tracks like a line. And what that represents is how people feel about it. It represents the emotional intensity of the journey. So to give you an example from this one, say we are coming to a hotel. We're feeling pretty good about checking into the hotel. And then we try to find some parking. We can't find parking and the experience starts to go down. Then we walk into the hotel lobby and we ask for our booking. They can't find our booking. It takes 10 minutes. The experience goes down. Then they tell us our room isn't ready and the experience goes down even further. And so when you find that you're mapping these points, the moments when people are having negative experiences, they're really the opportunities to turn that experience around and create a special moment. So I realized that so far, yesterday and today, we've done a lot of talking at you. I think it would be good if you guys participated in this, if you got to use one of these tools. So I'd like to challenge you now to participate in creating your own customer journey map. It'd be good if you could pair up or in groups of 3s, take 5 minutes to make a list of all the steps involved in going to a restaurant to eat dinner. Do you think you guys could do that? List as many steps as possible. Can I get some nods or shaking heads? We can come up with so many ways to innovate. Maybe they're incremental innovations, that's okay, but it really is so easy to come up with new ideas. I mean, a restaurant is such an old concept, and yet there's still so many new ideas that we could have created in just the 2 to 3 minutes that we spent sitting here to really change the entire experience of what a restaurant could be like. So for those of you who have your own business, or maybe for those of you who work in other people's business, this is a really powerful exercise. Map out your own business, map out the business that you work in, and think about which of these steps could we improve on? Which of these steps could we make wow? Which of these steps could we use to be really unique and stand out from the competition? So, has anyone seen this before? Yes, okay, good. It's not my favorite model, to be honest, but it's popular, hence why everyone knows it. Again, it's the same point. Each of these boxes represents an opportunity where you can innovate in one particular element of your business. It represents a space where you can create a wow moment. So it's still the same point, but just tackling it from a different direction. So to use an example that's very close to the one you suggested, in Japan, they now have where you can scan your groceries via QR codes, you hop on the subway, and when you get off the subway, your groceries are ready to be picked up and taken home. So you don't have to spend time wandering around the supermarket. Instead, you can use that time while you're waiting for your next subway train to order your groceries. So a really simple example of how you can innovate within a particular channel, which is the delivery of your groceries. So it's really easy to stand up here and talk about what everyone else should be doing. But I think it's much harder to walk the talk. And so I want to talk a little bit about my own story and how I've used some of these methods and design thinking to come up with my second to last business. It was a company called Norwegian. And like most good design thinking, it started from that perspective of going out and talking to people. And having talked to tourists, I realized that most of them weren't enjoying visiting Tromsø city. Not because Tromsø isn't spectacular. It is absolutely the most amazing nature, but the city isn't so exciting. But there's no buses. Catching a taxi is way too expensive. There's no trains. So how do you move people from inside the city out into the spectacular nature? You can rent a car, right? But it's somehow about just renting a car and being out there is not the same experience. So I thought, what about if we could have a portable hotel room? What about if we could drive our hotel room out into nature and stay there? And so again, I started talking to people, asking for their feedback, prototyping the idea, and I got really positive feedback. And so I thought, okay, let's do this. And I started with a prototype. It looks crap. No one else has to tell me that. I know that just drawing out your business idea and how the back of a van could look like isn't anything special. But then you start building it in cardboard, and you're really excited about it because now you're passionate about the idea, and you take out your cardboard and you show it to people, and they're like, what is this? What are you talking about? But that's okay. You can still get feedback from people about what they like, what they don't like. And then you can invest even more time building on your prototype. You can spend some time sitting in the back of a van, thinking about how everything would be built. You can sleep in the back of a van in 30 degrees, and I promise you it's not a pleasant experience. But it's still a learning process. It's about figuring out what works and, in particular, what doesn't work. And then slowly your prototype gets more and more creative. It invests a little bit more time. And then eventually you can start building the product properly. And eventually you end up with a product that looks like this, which is just a bed and a kitchen in the back of a van. You spray paint the van to make it look kind of cool. Not everything goes all right. It rains, the spray paint comes off, but that's prototyping for you. Not everything is meant to go perfect along the way. You're going to have hiccups, you're going to have problems. You build a website which allows you to start selling it, and in about 6 months, I turned €4,000 into about €12,000 with my prototype of the business, which is some pretty good feedback. You know, that's the kind of feedback that you want from people, paying customers who are prepared to rent your van, who are prepared to rent that experience of having a hotel room out in nature. But my main point is this, that business doesn't always have to be complex. Sometimes it can be as simple as a man and his van. So don't think that you have to come up with some creative new technology to do business. Sometimes it can be a very simple idea where you've come up with an incremental innovation to make your product slightly different from everyone else's. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to hear them.